Members, we've got a quorum already, so may I now call the meeting to order. No information papers have been issued since the last meeting. Item 2 on the agenda, items for discussion at the next meeting. Do members wish to raise any items for discussion next time?
Can
I ask the clerk what items there will be for the next meeting? Now, the next meeting will be held at 2:30 on the 12th of March. And we've got these items already. Legislative proposals relating to formula products and food intended for infants and young children under the age of 36 months in Hong Kong. Update on the avian flu vaccination program in local chicken farms. And also the safety of genetically modified food. You're welcome, Mr. Cole. Welcome. Dr. Koh Wing Man, Mrs. Marian Lai, the Permanent Secretary, Mr. Clement Leung, Director of Food and Environmental Hygiene, Ms. Vivian Sum, Deputy Director of Food and Environmental Hygiene, and Mr. Fan Yong Kah, Assistant Director, Food and Environmental Hygiene Department. And we also have the Undersecretary with us, Professor Sophia Chan. Miss Claudia Mo? Not yet. I'm just wishing to indicate my wish to ask questions. All right. So concerning our next regular meeting to be held on the 12th of March, if members have no particular comments, then the 3 items will be discussed. Item 3, assistance scheme for hawkers in fixed pitch hawker areas. On the 4th of February, the Kwun Tong Mat Wah Street temporary hawker area provided our members with a submission. I believe members have all got the submission, and also we've just received another submission from the concerned group on Wan Chai Bazaar. This submission is dated the 5th of February. I think this paper has already been tabled for members' reference. Now, for this assistance scheme, a funding proposal will be put to FC, and as a result, all members of the council have been invited to take part in a discussion. Now, the clerk has reminded me to remind members of the declaration of interest requirement under 83A of the Rules of Procedure. Now, if members have a direct or indirect pecuniary interest in the matter, they should not move a motion. They should not move an amendment and to the motion, and they should not speak on a subject unless they've declared their pecuniary interest. So may I remind members that if they have a direct or indirect pecuniary interest in the matter, then before they speak, they need to first of all declare their interest, the nature of their interest. So may I now invite Dr. Koh to take us through the paper. Yes, Chairman, thank you. In September last year, the CE announced the scheme. I will not go into the details of the scheme. There is no need for me to repeat the content of the scheme. But then I will elaborate on certain supplementary information. So, about 4,300 licensed hawkers will be covered, and they are operating in 43 fixed-pitch hawker areas. Now, because of the need to reduce fire risk, some of the pitches or stores need to be relocated, and then some markets or some hawker stores need to be upgraded in order to improve the fire resistance capability and design of the stores. And then there is also an extra payment to be paid to those who opt for voluntary surrender of their hawker licenses to the government. Now, for those who opt for voluntary surrender of their hawker licenses to the government, they will be able to help us make available space for the relocation of stores. In fact, we have been liaising very closely with the stakeholders. We're trying to explain to them the principles and the details of the scheme, and we've also sounded out their views. And according to our assessment, for stores which need to be relocated, there are about 550. The purpose is to reduce the fire risks. And then concerning in situ reconstruction of the cabinet type stores so as to improve their fire resistance capability, we propose that the amount granted would be 40,000 to 54,000 on a reimbursement basis. In fact, we've already sought quotations from contractors, and we are of the view that such amounts are reasonable. And as for stores which need to be as for the stores which are required to relocate, a non-accountable amount of $10,000 will be given to each eligible applicant. And then concerning the so-called hawker permitted place stores or HPP stores, now these stores are more flimsy and simple in their structure, makeshift in their structure, and so the amount is $20,000 to $27,000. And again, an additional non-accountable sum of $10,000 will be offered. For this $10,000, it's not granted on a reimbursement basis. And for hawkers who are willing to voluntarily surrender their licenses, we are proposing an EGP or an extra payment of $120,000. Cabinet type and HPP stores alike, so as to encourage take-up and facilitate timely vacation of space in the interest of public safety. Now, we will not dictate the appearance of the stores in future, but of course there will be certain requirements. including structural safety requirements and the fire safety requirements. And, of course, the surrender of hawker licenses to the government will be on a voluntary basis. I want to emphasize that the amounts proposed are reasonable amounts. We've done a lot of research in recent months, and we've come up with these amounts. In fact, we have communicated with representatives of the hawkers, and they are of the view that these amounts proposed are reasonable. But of course, we can't guarantee that all hawkers will be happy with these amounts, and there may be some hawkers who may hold different views. And Chairman, we've received 2 submissions. One says that we should not try to reduce the number of hawkers in the name of fire safety. Now, I want to say that in fact, fire safety is our paramount concern. And of course, in doing so, in proceeding from the angle of fire safety, the number of hawkers will be reduced, but reducing the number of hawkers is not our primary goal. And we also hope that the business environment of the hawkers can be improved as a result. Thank you. Thank you very much, Secretary. Ms. Claudia Mo, Mr. Chen Chi-chu, Mr. Wong Kwok Heng, Mr. Kenneth Chen, Mr. Chuan Kok Chu, and Mr. Vincent Fang have raised their hands. So 5 minutes for each member. Ms. Claudia Mo. Thank you, Chairman. Now, I'm not trying to attack or criticize any official. My impression is that the government really wants to wipe out these hawker stores. The last term of government mentioned a licensing system. And now there is the scheme, and people do get the impression that you are trying to reduce the number of hawker stores in the name of fire safety. So can you promise that there will not be a reduction in the total number of stores? That's the first question. And then second question, I want to say that this consultation exercise is done in quite a hasty manner. It's now February, and the Lunar New Year holidays are approaching. And we're told that you'll go to FC in March. The frontline hawkers would like to have a longer period of time to reflect to the administration their difficulties. Secretary. Chairman, I want to say that there is no policy on the part of the government to try to reduce the number of hawker stores. In fact, we hope that the business environment of the hawkers can be improved. We understand that the hawkers are part of our economy, and when the economy is poor, and job opportunities can be provided, and also these hawkers provide more choices for our consumers, and so we have no intention to wipe out hawkers.
Could you pledge the overall number of hawkers that won't change? Well, if you want to not reduce the number of hawkers to an absolute figure of not even changing 1 or 2, well, I cannot guarantee that. all I can say is that we can relieve some space and allow them to relocate. And some of the hawkers want to retire, and we're providing an incentive for them to surrender their license. So if I issue new licenses, then I cannot release space in front of building access. I cannot relocate a hazardous place and relocate it to a safer place. All I can say is that we don't want to suppress the number of hawkers, and whether we issue licenses depends on community need. Can you extend the consultation to June? Let me deal with the consultation question. The hawker measures were in response to death and casualty in a fire in the Far Yuen Street hawker area. So after the fire, there were two large consultations. One was about how we could reduce fire hazard. It was a territory-wide consultation. And on this occasion, we had measures that arose from the follow-up of the consultation. The majority of the public agree that while maintaining hawker livelihood, we also need to reduce fire hazard, and we need to retain the number of hawkers, and yet larger fire hazards have to be relocated from building access areas. So to respond to Ms. Claudia Mo's question, we have already conducted two large consultation exercises, and we are taking some specific measures, including measures suggested by legislators. These have been included. We are using public money to help hawkers relocate and rebuild their stalls. Some legislators also called for a voluntary surrender of license. So elderly hawkers, in the face of more stringent law enforcement, this will provide an incentive to surrender their license. And the vacant space can be used to relocate hazardous stalls that affect fire safety, so we can create a safer environment. And that is a response to the panel's questions and the residents' district council views. Can you extend consultation to June? As the director said, even though the assistance plan was promoted in September, in fact, a lot of the suggestions were formulated in prior consultations, and we do have regular consultation, and I've heard different views, including legislators meeting with the industry. So put it simply, you are not going to extend the consultation. Well, if we are to live up to the pledge, that is the timetable says pledge, then we can't postpone. I just need the answer. Mr. Tan Ji-chun. My question is about voluntary surrender of hawker license and a one-off ex gratia payment. The original idea was to help relocate hazardous stalls through voluntary surrender, but in paragraph 9, the voluntary surrender of license is not applicable to licenses issued in 08-09. It's because these people only recently chose to enter the hawking trade, and there's no strong case for them to surrender license. So I'd like to have, what do you mean by no strong case for allowing them to surrender their license? And I think this is an extra standard applied to the surrender of hawker license. For example, you said it should help relocate hazardous stalls. Well, even though you call them new licenses, but they date back to 0809. So are you thinking the $120,000 ex gratia payment is a bonus? Well, let's say if you have avian flu and you ask people to surrender the license, then you shouldn't discriminate between new and old licenses. Director, I'd also like to hear your views. Our consideration is that the new hawkers, they had only received a license in 2010. In the process, as Mr. Chan said, they had only expressed an interest to join the hawker trade not too long ago. And if I were to give them $120,000 in return for the license, we have reservations, because we only issued the license 2 years ago, and now we have to pay them $120,000. We think that that's not quite good use of public funds. So the voluntary surrender of license, this is different from our previous surrender of chicken licenses. We are not trying to nix this industry. We are aware that there are concerns in society. We heard that the legislators want to preserve the industry, so we're trying to strike a balance. We have this measure. So hawkers who have received their license recently, we have this restriction. So your direction is to retain the industry, but surrendering the license is a personal decision. It might help the environment, or do you have any goal regarding the surrender of license? How many licenses do you want to see surrendered? Well, why don't you say there should be a priority for elderly hawkers, and young hawkers who should be on a waiting list? It seems that you don't wish to hand out $120,000 to the new entrants. Well, there are reasons for both cases, and on this point I would like to reserve my view. I'd like to hear more views. You have an open you have an open mind so far. Well, do you have any goal on the surrender of license? We don't have any goal on license surrendered. Well, in the Finance Committee, we will make some assumptions in our document there, but we don't have an upper limit or lower limit. We don't. So if 4,000 licenses are surrendered, you would accept all of them? I don't believe that all 4,000 would surrender. I think one reason to surrender licenses is to vacate the 550 spaces. The director might not be able to give you an accurate figure how many licenses how many spaces need to be added, but one indicator cannot be quantified, and that is we need to make it convenient to relocate 550 stalls. Well, your principle seems to contravene your original idea. If you have crowded areas, they should have a priority, even if they are the cohort from 0809. You shouldn't place a restriction on new entrants. Wong Gok Heng, Chan Galot. If he has an open attitude, please provide some input. regarding this voluntary surrender and EGP of 120,000. I have received a submission from Hong Kong Kowloon New Territories Hawkers Association, and they had asked me to put a counter proposal on their behalf. They want 200,000. Their reason being they have been operating dozens of years, decades, and if they surrender the license, it is a permanent ceasing, cessation of their livelihood, and they feel that 120,000 is too little. So can the administration consider 200,000? We'll see how the Secretary responds. And the second submission, as the tabled letter indicates, the Matwagai temporary hawker, they have 2 points. In the other 18 hawker areas, will the government consider including them in the EGP ex gratia payment scheme as well? There are also mobile hawking licenses. So if these 18 hawker areas and mobile hawkers, they feel if the ex gratia allowance is attractive, whether it's 120,000 or whatever, if it's attractive and they wish to surrender, they will, then under these circumstances, can the administration consider extending the scope of ex gratia allowance? The director can answer first. I'll respond to the second question, the Matwagai hawker letter. Referring to our paper or policy, we want to enhance fire safety, and therefore we have this ex gratia payment. Regarding hawker areas like Matwagai, their current operation is away from the street level. They have a specialized hawking area, and there are already infrastructure, fire safety measures in place for them to operate. So for this group of hawkers, our paper or our scheme on this occasion would not be applicable in their case, because they do not need to be relocated from fire safety exits, and it does not exist the case that they need to rebuild or upgrade their stall.
做生意嘅個場所嘅，咁所以。
So I want to say that this scheme doesn't apply to itinerant hawkers, and that is why in this scheme we haven't covered this group. And Mr. Wong Kwok Hing is of the view that the amount offered for voluntary surrender should be increased. Now, previously, we had an exercise for voluntary surrender of itinerant hawker licenses, and the amount offered was $30,000. And then for cooked food store licenses, $60,000. So we can see that the amount has been increased rather substantially this time. We understand that the hawkers would like to have a larger amount of EGP, but I want to say that we have in fact consulted the hawkers, and also please bear in mind that this is a voluntary surrender. And that's why we have got this $120,000. 30,000, 60,000, that was a long time ago. And they've proposed 200,000. Now, because for the OALA, the asset limit was about 190,000. So I hope that you will consider that. Mr. Kenneth Chan. The Bureau is trying to tell members that you're not trying to phase out or wipe out these hawkers. You have to take into account environmental hygiene and fire safety, and that's why you've come up with this proposal, and you will go to FC for funding. So it seems that this paper arrived rather late. Some say that you want to reduce the number of hawkers in the name of fire safety, but the Secretary has refuted this allegation. Yes, we understand that some hawkers are willing to surrender their licenses voluntarily to the government. But I think the hawkers want to know whether there is a policy within the government to promote the development of hawker stores. Now, because these are hawker stores and hawker areas, some of them have become landmarks in Hong Kong. And they are of the view that they want a longer consultation period. They want the administration to take into account measures to further develop the industry. For example, they propose the setting up of a fund to try to attract more people to become hawkers. So what are your views? I agree with Dr. Chan, but I want to say that we have injected positive elements to help hawkers in a rather negative scenario. I think we all can all remember something unfortunate happened, and as a result, there is a need to take some action. And I cannot promise you that the number of stores will not be reduced at all. I can just tell you that this is not our primary objective. Yes, we can have other policies to try to help hawkers, but under the scheme, it is not appropriate to take into account this element. Let's say, for example, if I am a licensed store holder, I may be willing to surrender my license to you, but then I do have some assistants who may still be young. So can you allow the assistants to take over the licenses so that they can operate, say, elsewhere? Chairman, we understand that in fact, many hawkers have been asking their assistants to operate their stores for them. that the objective of the scheme is not to give a sum of money to the hawker so that he surrenders his license and then the license is granted to the assistant. In fact, we hope that we can have enough space vacated for the relocation of certain stores. And if we adopt your suggestion, then we'll not be able to achieve that purpose. That is, to make available space for the relocation of stores in order to reduce fire hazards. Mr. Chan Kwok-chu. Concerning the 550 stores, we don't know whether 550 will be surrendering their licenses. So how did you come up with 120,000? You mentioned 30,000, 60,000. I don't know whether the 120,000 will be able to attract over 1,000 applications. I don't know, but maybe this amount is not attractive enough to the hawkers. So do you have any contingency measures if the number of applications is fewer than 550? If the number is over 550, of course, no problem. And then I would like to follow up on a question raised by Mr. Chen. Concerning the 140 odd, I don't think many of them will be interested in the 120,000 because they can continue to operate for many years to come. Receiving $120,000 won't be enough to provide for oneself for the rest of one's life. So I think you should also cover the 140 odd hawkers. And the government also needs to ask itself this question: what is the objective of our hawker policy? So it seems that you are trying to allow the hawker trade or the hawker industry to wither. Now, every time there is a scheme, there are certain objectives, but the effect is that the hawker industry will wither. Hawkers try to stand on their own feet. They try to make a living themselves, and they also provide choices for consumers. Now, look at the hawker bazaar in Tin Shui Wai. You can see that it can serve its purpose. Now, the hawker may be willing to surrender the license in return for $120,000. What will happen to the assistants? Some of them may be in their 40s, in their 50s, and it may be difficult for them to find other jobs. So I think the government should start a review on its hawker policy. Now, you can't just deal with individual problems or incidents without reviewing the entire policy. Now, we're concerned about poverty alleviation, and we are of the view that the government's hawker policy is one way to alleviate poverty. So I just want to say that the scheme will deal a further blow to the hawker industry. Secretary, I will say a few words and then the director can supplement. I can understand that members are concerned about the numbers. The FEHD, of course, has got a lot of figures in mind. Now we have announced the scheme, but we don't know how many hawkers will respond. So we'll see how many are willing to surrender their licenses. And of course, we need to have the 550 stores relocated. And if the number of voluntary surrenders exceeds 550, then maybe different people may put forward different suggestions or requests. So I do not want to promise here that the number of stores will not be reduced. In fact, I've heard a lot of different views and suggestions on this subject. And will the government conduct a hawker policy review? Now, we have no policy to let the hawker industry wither. In fact, we are having new hawker areas or bazaars, and our paramount concern is the function of these bazaars. And then concerning hawker policies, I think the director can give members some background information. But then time's up. Perhaps you can try to find some time to reply later. Mr. Vincent Fang and then Ms. Helena Wong. I want to say I welcome this paper. I understand that after the 5 Yuen Street fire, the director has done a lot. And I would like to say that I do understand that the department has done a lot. So because of fire safety considerations, you are proposing to relocate 550 stores. But what if there is no single hawker who is willing to surrender his or her license voluntarily? Do you have space to relocate the 550 stores? Yes, I thank Mr. Vincent Fang for his question. We intend to relocate 550 stores. In fact, under me there is a steering committee. And the steering committee comprises representatives from the Fire Services Department, the Buildings Department, Home Affairs Department, and the district officers concerned. So basically, we are able to find space for the 550 stores. Now, at the moment, there are some vacant stores. There are some stores which have been frozen. And on the same street, for example, there is space with no stores. And so such space can be made available for the relocation of stores away from staircase discharge points of buildings or EVAs. But of course, we understand that among hawkers, they have different views as to which store is of a prime location. And we, of course, hope that some hawkers can voluntarily surrender their licenses to us so that there will be more stores of good location for the 550 store operators to choose from.
We can still manage to relocate, but the chances of getting a consensus amongst the hawkers might be smaller. But we can try to arrange for within the same hawker area, and we are confident of achieving that. Well, if you have 550 vacant spaces for them to relocate, you can have in situ relocation Well, what if your surrender of hawker licenses, let's say 400 stalls are willing to accept $120,000, well, then the 400 stalls should be released. It's very difficult to do business, rents are going up, so if you have 400, it can allow 400 people to do business. So the government should not withdraw these opportunities. They should be made available. And second, vacant stalls have a large impact. If I have vacant spaces right next to me, it has a large impact on hawkers. Well, you can take this opportunity to upgrade the fire safety. You can relocate or release some space. I think that it would be very good. So if you have, let's say, 400 vacant spaces, you should not withdraw it. You should make it available for hawkers. Okay? Secretary? In the director's response, you understand that even though we might have some goals, we might have some 500 spaces, but in the process, we need to consider relocated hawkers might feel the space is not ideal, it's not fortuitous, and it will, but having extra space will make our job easier, and the hawkers will have higher acceptance. So if we do have more spaces vacated and we still have surplus of those, I don't want to have any fixed ideas. You are correct. Your views are all legitimate. You have to consider business environment, whether it's too crowded and so on. And we also need to answer to LegCo. So there is more room for discussion on how to take this opportunity to enhance the business environment. I just don't want to see the government taking this opportunity to reduce hawker licenses. I understand. Unless a reduction can enhance the business environment. We don't want to reduce the number of stalls. I understand if there's a lot of vacant stalls, it's not good for the business. Our goal should be to enhance the business environment. I'd like to ask the Democratic Party agrees that we should enhance management of hawker stalls, but we should not decrease business opportunities. We need to enhance fire safety. But there are some questions. First of all, the retrospective period. Paragraph 14 says it's not retrospective. So after the fire, street fire, some stalls have been relocated, there have been some upgrade. So these stall owners, can they claim this assistance? Second, fire safety standards. Does the administration have a very clear fire safety standard in black and white for stall owners to enhance compliance? Because fire safety standards have changed. Do we have these clear standards? And is it fire resistant material and having in Annex 2 the assistance scheme covers the tarpaulin, the electric supply, will it include fire safety installations? Thank you for your 3 questions. The first would be, it's hard to provide a retrospective period. It is hard to draw a line. Regarding building material, we're not just relying on the black and white specifications. For some people, it's just easier to communicate orally. In the process, we will continue communication. We will respond to them. We will help them complete the upgrade work. I'll defer to Director for question 3. Regarding fire safety standards in Annex B, we have listed all the fire safety requirements. And basically, when we implemented the scheme, we required the hawking stalls to comply with these fire safety standards. Of course, they can have their own modifications, but we have some basic fire safety requirements. Regarding the fire safety installations, we had, for example, required a fire shield, sprinkler systems, and we found that the stall owners these were not popular, and they felt that these comprehensive facilities would incur significant maintenance costs. So besides having the minimum fire safety standard in each stall area, we also have some advisory committees. So besides food, environment, health, we also have fire services and district councilors and firefighting committee participation. So besides education, we also suggest whether there should be fire safety drills. We also consulted whether they would approve of installing fire extinguishers, and during the dry season, we would also promote fire safety education. So if they can comply with our requirements in Annex B, then it should enhance fire safety. I find it strange why we don't have clear fire standards. So you're saying that Annex B is sufficient. Is it required to have a fire extinguisher and the size of the extinguisher? Can they apply for an assistance? Could you elaborate a bit? Regarding requirements in Annex B, we had consulted the fire services. This meets their minimum standards. Regarding installations, if it's a fire extinguisher, it's not expensive. I think consultation can also deal with other issues. For example, infrastructure, the tarpaulin, the electricity supply. In our $40,000 assistance scheme, after consultation, the majority of costs can be covered under this scheme. Tommy Chung. Thank you, Chairman. I agree with the government paper and the funding. I had stated very early the 5 figures. The compensation is meaningless, so we need a 6-figure compensation. And they came up with a very low digit figure. So I don't have grounds to ask for any further increase. The two industry associations also support the scheme, but for busy stalls, busy areas, this EGA might not be sufficient. We also like to see more space released in the busy areas in order to enhance fire safety. But the director seems very confident in his responses, and the business associations also support this. So I think I'd have to wait and see whether these measures are successful. But I'm not sure if Ms. Emily Lau will object in the Finance Committee. But as a member of this panel, I support the paper. No response required. We have a lot of communication. Thank you, Chairman. I've heard the administration, and we have consulted with the hawkers. The majority of them are satisfied, but they do have some concerns, such as flexibility. If they're surrendering of license, they will receive 120,000. But those who are 60 years old who wish to continue 2 or 3 years before surrendering the license, but then your work, you will have priorities. So some people will also accept relocation, but in drawing lots, if they can't reach a deal, can they change their plan? And last question, the hawker stalls, it's part of local culture, and the administration also said they would like to retain this. Now, in case we have a lot of surrenders, especially in one area, and it had a good business environment, but let's say if a third of the stalls are surrendered, then if there's a negative impact on the business environment, do you have any measures to invigorate the area? In September, after the announcement was made, we had said it will take time to complete the scheme, so it will take the course of 5 years. In the 5 years, we don't have any phases or plans. So if we don't have any other recommendations, the hawkers will have sufficient time to surrender their license. But the overall relocation, installation, the hawkers will have to coordinate their efforts with the department. Otherwise, 5 years won't be sufficient. But yes, surrendering the license, I think they can wait 5 years to surrender. I can add, after the fire, FEHD mentality had changed. Besides law enforcement, we also see them as partners now. So in the process, after the 2 large consultation exercises, we heard the business associations and hawker views. So this is the result. This scheme is the result of 2 years negotiation. During consultation, an important principle was that they didn't want a broad approach. We had to have discussions with them regarding individual districts, and we had very detailed discussions. So for operational details or individual aspirations, we can reach a consensus through discussion. The secretary also mentioned that it will take 5 years to complete the scheme, so we can provide stall owners sufficient flexibility. The last question, Chairman, if there are surplus stalls surrendered, it will give us an opportunity to rethink how to use that space. It's very proactive. We can have further discussions. So you don't have a specific direction, but you will deal with it. Yes, okay. Well, we've completed the first round, and I have a question of my own. First of all, in paragraph 14, the administration says that the scheme will have no retrospective effect. After the fire, some stall owners had undertaken works to make their stall more safe, and you didn't provide an assistance. It seems to be a penalty on those scrupulous stall owners. How many of these stall owners and how many have you inadvertently penalized? So, Director? Yes, we are aware that after the fire, the majority of stall owners had upgraded their stalls, and some had improved their facilities. But as the Director said, if they had undertaken the works and do not meet Annex B standards, then it's hard to have a retrospective arrangement. But we are aware that when there is such a situation, so we have this scheme to take effect over 5 years, and they can apply for in situ relocation, and towards the end of the scheme, their stall might need upgrading, so we have allowed for some flexibility. They can conduct upgrades in phases, and they can apply for this assistance scheme. So that's why we don't have a retrospective effect, and through a flexible arrangement, we hope to assist them.
另外呢
Now, I think the Secretary can check the records. After the 2 fires, the Civic Party stated that you should not put all the blame on the hawkers and the hawker stalls concerning the fire hazards. In fact, you should have done a better job concerning overall planning. Secretary, you had a positive view concerning our hawker policy, and you said that the hawkers represented an integral part of Hong Kong's economy. So can I ask, when you are going to carry out an overall review of Hong Kong's hawker policy. For example, will you identify areas for use as hawker bazaars? And as Mr. Vincent Fang has suggested, assuming that 400 hawkers surrender their licenses to you, then you shouldn't reduce the overall number of hawkers by 400. Instead, you should allow assistance to bid for these licenses. As you may remember, in 2009, when there was a tendering exercise for hawker licenses, there was oversubscription. The response was very, very enthusiastic. Chairman, we have to consider the number of stalls available, the distribution. I am willing to consider ways to further develop the industry. But then I want to say that concerning pictures in markets, we had a discussion. Now, some members have suggested that we should construct markets. Some say we should provide hawker bazaars, and hawker bazaars are different from these fixed pitches. So I will really have to review our markets first. But of course, when we carry out a review on markets, we may also touch on hawker bazaars and related issues. All right. We've already overrun, but then 2 members want to ask questions in the second round. All right, 2 minutes for each member. Mr. Cheung Kwok Chu and then Mr. Kenneth Chan. Yes, Chairman. The hawker policy can be discussed later. But then with regard to the one of the submissions received, the hawkers want an extension of the consultation period. They do not think that their views can be adequately reflected in the hawker management consultative committees. They want to put their views directly to you. They want a longer consultation period so that the government will have sufficient time to consult all the fixed pitch hawkers. And the Secretary, you said that you would go to Finance Committee for funding. I want to say that even after you've obtained funding, the discussion can still go on, and it doesn't mean that as you have to get funding approval, you can't continue with the discussion. So have you talked to these groups? I mean these groups which have put in these submissions? Yes, Chairman, thank you. It's just that we don't want to affect the timetable or our timetable. So I can only promise members that the department will contact these organizations. Yes, Chairman, I have the same concern. I think the department should meet with these groups. They're not against improving fire safety. They just hope that the government's hawker policy can be improved. I think their views are valuable in helping the administration map out the way forward concerning Hong Kong's soccer policy. And then as to whether the 141 hawkers should also be covered by this assistance scheme. Here it says that the option is not applicable to these hawkers, but can you be more flexible? In other words, if you do not have too many hawkers surrendering their licenses, then if some of these 141 hawkers are willing to surrender their licenses, then will you cover them as well under the scheme? I agree with you on the first point, Mr. Chan. And then secondly, now, in future, if there are a lot of vacant stalls, then we will have to consider how to deal with them. But then we have to be fair. We are of the view that it's appropriate to exclude the 141 hawkers from this exercise. But then we will consider the matter after we have ascertained how many stalls are vacant. So I can gather that members have no objection to the bureaus coming to FC for funding approval in March. But Secretary, you have expressed a willingness to talk to those groups which have written to us, and we hope to have a report from you on the outcome of such meetings and discussions in the FC meeting in March. Right. Next item on the agenda, expression allowance for trawler vessel owners affected by the trawl ban. Now we've reserved 30 minutes for this item. So those who are interested, interested to ask questions, please raise your hands. Ms. Claudia Mo, Mr. Sin Chong Kai, Deputy Chairman, Mr. Wong Kwok Heng, Mr. Albert Chan. Right, have I omitted anyone? No? Including myself, 6 members. So we have 30 minutes, so 5 minutes for each member. All right, 5 minutes for each member. Miss Claudia Mo. I thought they would give us an introduction. Let them sit down first. Let them settle down first, Chairman. All right. Just a few introductory remarks, Secretary. Chairman, thank you. Trawling was banned from the 31st of December 2012. And the expression allowance scheme has already been launched. We understand that some of the fishermen are discontented with the assessment, with the amounts, and so on and so forth. Now, we explained the principles of the scheme very clearly to members in the Finance Committee. Now, my understanding is that at that time it was said that the amount of EGA should be proportionate to 2 things. Firstly, whether these vessels were operating in the affected waters most of the time, and thus their financial losses. And at the time, we didn't intend to just divide the amount equally among all the vessel owners. Rather, we wanted to assess the financial loss suffered by the owners of the different types of trawlers. I think that's all I want to say for the time being. Ms. Claudia Mo and then Mr. Sin Chung Kai. Yes, Chairman. You, according to your estimate, 400 vessels would be eligible, but now the number is 267. Now, the fewer the number of vessels, the more each owner would get. Now, we have fishermen representatives in the public gallery. Now, they have heard that in deciding whether a vessel is qualified, you depend on field validation surveys and also observations by AFCD. So is it that some vessels have not been photoed? Now, may I refer to page 2, concerning the inshore trawlers. According to the FC paper, we're talking about 1.5 to 2 million for pair trawlers.
But now it's double. The lower limit was 1.5 million, now it's 3.4 million, and the upper limit was 2 million, and it's now 4.8 million. Do you have any discrimination? Because the fishermen are the fishermen that weren't part of the cohort and they didn't receive the payment, whether you call it allowance or subsidy. It's to the tune of hundreds of millions, and each vessel owner receives millions. The hawkers only receive 120,000. I have asked AFCD to give us a breakdown. So, can you tell us which vessel has received what amount of funding? I still don't have those figures. I'd like to raise a matter of principle. I'm aware the estimates initially, and currently there's a difference. I have listened to my colleagues, the inter-department working group. How did it come to a decision? It's not like you said which vessel wasn't in a certain area and therefore wasn't in the picture. The staff colleagues can explain in further detail, and I'm very confident that our civil servants do not they did not engage in any transfer of interest. Now, how did they conduct the assessment? We have our staff here to answer. Could you give us a concise summary? Well, first of all, the intergovernment working group, each part of it was supervised by the ICAC, and they had also provided consultation on graft, and we complied 100%. So you can rest assured there was no bias. Second, I'm asked for figures. I want figures in black and white. Ms. Mo, yes, you had written a letter a long time ago. The figures are rather complex. You asked for a very detailed breakdown, different area, different vessel type, and so on. We're still compiling that data. So you can rest assured we will disclose the figures. We have maintained contact with Ms. Mo. Next, Sin Jong-gai. Thank you, Chair. According to Finance Committee information, we just need to comply with the FC requirements. The FC paper is very clear. I can see there should be 1.1 billion for inshore trawling vessels, but according to Annex 4, the 269 vessels have received some 800 million in compensation. That's an average figure. So the 1.1 billion, it's 70% of the 1.1 billion, and another 30%, what is it earmarked for? If there are already vessels that are disqualified and you have an appeal, who is eligible for appeal? In the paper, the case 1, 2, and 3, if you visit the vessels, the facilities, the radar, its trawling net and motor and so on, its engine, you can estimate whether it is inshore trawling or offshore trawling. You cannot forge it. You can take a look at the facilities. You can also look at the receipts for fueling. For inshore trawling, they use less fuel. So you should have a very scientific way to assess the vessels, because there is concern that the 1.1 billion should be used for compensation for the inshore trawlers. So when there are appeals, will they receive more payment? So how is the remaining 30% of the earmark funds going to be spent? Chairman, there is a sum of 300 million set aside for the appeals committee, depending on the appeals cases, whether they are justified. If it's justified, they can use the funds. Mr. Sin is also correct. We have a very detailed inspection of the process. Look at the size of the vessel, the facilities on the vessel. It's receipts, it's a fuel receipts. Where is it active? Where is it seen? And so on. We have AFCD experts who are aware when they are operating and when they are not operating. So I think the appeals cases are saying that your inspection frequency was not high enough, and you therefore didn't see me, and they couldn't keep their receipts. And there are also some gray areas, even though we have territorial lines, but the vessel is moving, and sometimes it's moving in one area, and sometimes it's operating in another area. So are our methods accurate enough? So all the methodologies, they can be argued in an appeals court, and well, any supplement. The 30% of the earmarked funds it is set aside in case the appeals mechanism overrules our initial finding. But we don't rule out that there could be some errors in some cases. We look at a lot of objective factors, but if a vessel of similar size and facilities and they choose to operate in Hong Kong or they operate out of Hong Kong, it's the vessel owner's subjective choice. And if that leads to some criteria that can be objectively verified, well, there's an opportunity, there is a chance that the applicant did not provide sufficient data for us to come with a more accurate assessment. Then we need to set aside some money for the appeal committee to make a final judgment, and there can be money set aside for the inshore trawlers. Otherwise, it would not be fair for them. Vice Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I heard two colleagues. One asked, are they fair and are they in collusion? Well, my question is, first of all, I'd like to follow up Mr. Sin Chung Kai's question. You have earmarked 30% of the funds, and according to FC, you have 90 million for emergency funds. Our understanding was that it was also set aside for appeals. So is there any conflict there? Second question, I had met with the fishermen just now to talk about some problems. Some have received the results and applied for the ex gratia allowance. They had also signed a paper, and that had been recorded by the department. So if they take the check, will that be used against their appeal case? And second question is, what was the paper they signed? They couldn't give me a copy. It was returned to the department. So could you provide us with a copy to see what was written in that paper? Third question, the Secretary also mentioned inshore trawling. We have some objections, some appeals. The administration had also authorized the appeals committee some powers. How much authority do they have? Could you clarify that for me on their powers? Second, what kind of information will the administration provide to the appeals committee? Because we're afraid they are biased. And lastly, I'd like to ask, some fishermen have also said that half the time they are trawling and half the time they are just sorting through the fish. But during inspections, there are some storage facilities, and they might not comply with the trawling requirements. So I'd like to hear from the administration, how would you deal with that? And I would like you well, there are a lot of reasons for appeal. In the morning, I met with some fishermen representatives. They admit that in the first application, in their inter-departmental working group, they had not put forward that information. So to supplement Mr. Sin Chung Kai's question, some receipts they could not find, but now they have available. And during their operations, they were working inshore, but during the inspection, because of objective reasons, they had to work offshore. So this new information can be considered by the appeals committee. For other detailed questions, I have to hand it over to Mr. So.
Dr. So, thank you. Concerning the emergency fund, the $90 million, we have reserved that amount. We haven't set aside the 30% because we're talking about a very big amount. Because for an eligible vessel, the amount can range from hundreds of thousands of dollars to millions of dollars. So concerning cases which are not clear-cut, the $90 million may not be enough. And then I just want to supplement our Chairman. Now concerning the eligible owners, I want to say some may be there for 12 months, some 10 months, some 8 months, some 6 months. But the administration only makes a distinction between 100% and half. So I just want to know whether there can be any adjustment in this regard. Yes, Dr. So. Now concerning the letter to be signed by the fisherman, first of all, he acknowledges receipt of the amount, and second, if he has provided false information in the application, then the ex gratia payment can be taken back by the administration. We can provide members of a copy of that letter. Yes, please do. And then concerning the terms of reference of the appeal board, members can refer to the annex. The appeal board makes sure that the interdepartmental working group has acted properly. Then what about a vessel which is a trawler as well as a fish collector? In fact, in the FC paper, it is stated that before October 2012, it must be a trawler, not used for other purposes, and so these will not be eligible. Mr. Wong Kwa Heng. Thank you, Chairman. Now, fishermen make a living by using their fishing vessels. The fishing vessels are all they have. But we understand that the government wants to conserve and restore marine resources. But still we need to take into account the livelihood of the affected fishermen. We have a lot of fishermen in the public gallery. We understand that they are very concerned about this matter. And I think the government's policy towards them should err on the lenient side. To many of these fishermen, they can no longer make a living. New Year is approaching. It's the most important festival in the year. And so the deadline for lodging appeals has been put back. The administration says that the fishermen can make use of this period to lodge their appeals. But I want the administration to give more assistance to the fishermen. They may not understand all these legalistic documents and all the legal implications. So many of these fishing vessels have returned. The fishermen have returned. How can you help the fishermen so that they can put their cases to you forcefully? and you should try to give them as much assistance as possible. I believe the fishermen friends in the public gallery really want you to adopt a more sympathetic approach. Yes, Chairman, thank you. Now, some members have reminded us that we need to act fairly, we need to act in accordance with the principles laid down in the Finance Committee paper. And this is what we have been doing. But I have received detailed reports from the Interdepartmental Working Group. They have done their work carefully. They have made a number of field visits, and some fishermen are of the view that the information that the IWG has got hold of may not fully reflect the operation of the vessels. And then there are fishermen who may not be in Hong Kong, and so cannot provide the relevant information to the IWG. So the IWG knows that while it needs to adhere to the Finance Committee paper principles, it should try to adopt a more sympathetic approach towards the fishermen. And then second, some vessel owners have expressed concerns as to how they are going to communicate with the appeals board. Now, as there will be over 1,000 appeals, then it will take quite some time for the appeal board to meet all the fishermen. But then I hope that the appeal board can arrange hearings for all the appellants. Now, some of the fishermen may not be able to provide written submissions to the appeal board. So I will ask the appeal board to try as far as possible to organize hearings for the appellants. I hope that the administration will understand that our fishermen rely on their vessels for a living. Many of them haven't kept documentary records, and also some of them are of lower educational attainment. And I want to say that without their vessels, they can't, or they can no longer make a living. So I hope that a more humane approach can be adopted by the government. Mr. Albert Chen, now according to the AFCD, the assessment was done in a professional and objective manner. I find such a remark laughable. I think the IWG has been operating in a black box. There is no transparency. In fact, a few months ago, I asked the IWG to make public the criteria. Now, the AFCD has conducted surveys, but they haven't announced the details. No, at that time when there were the 10 core projects, compensation to fishermen was based on 5 years catch, and then 7 years, and then now I understand it's about 11 years. So I've been following up on compensation for affected fishermen for over a decade. I think the FCD should make available all the data and figures. In fact, now, for example, couple of years ago, a fisherman caught a very big fish, and that fish could fetch $100,000. So the fisherman may not report all their catch to you. So I want to say that the data in your surveys may not be accurate. And have you asked the fishermen for the fuel cost? But then I think it's an open secret that some fishermen do buy duty not paid fuel. And then you may not have accurate information about the catch, about the volume of catch and so on and so forth. You can't just work in an air-conditioned office. You say you're transparent, you say you are professional, you say you are objective. Now show us all the data you have. Now I have been an electoral member for many years, and I think I am most angry with the AFCD when they deal with compensation for fishermen. Now when the government resumes land for development. Of course, I may have complaints, but then the AFCD is most rigid. Know that in the AFCD there are lots of experts, they are doctors. But then when it comes to compensation for fishermen, you pretend that you are the experts, but in fact you do not know as much as the fishermen. For some fishermen, they have been fishermen for their whole life. You look at them and you see that they look like fishermen, but then they have been ill for a few months, and how can they produce any proof that they haven't got any catch? And you can see the look of fishermen, but then for the fisherman representative in Lechco, he doesn't look like a fisherman. But anyway, I want to say that, do you know that if you do not give them compensation, they will not get any compensation anymore? Some of them are already 50 years old, 60 years old, and this appeal mechanism is a joke. Now, if you provide wrong information to the appeal board, then the board will make a wrong decision. Garbage in, garbage out. And then the IWG is extremely rigid. The fishermen can't get any compensation if the IWG feels that the Finance Committee principles are not met. So I think you should make known all the data you have before the cases or the appeals go to the appeal board. And then Sha Chow, you are putting aside some of the money because you may need to provide compensation for those fishermen. But I think they are not of the same category. So can you tell me why you have to put aside some money for those fishermen? Yes, Secretary. Yes, thank you, Chairman. Members may be worried about what sort of information we will be providing to the appeals board. Now, we promise that the information used by the IWG in vetting each and every case will be provided to the appeals board. And if the fishermen have additional information to offer to the appeals board, including verbal information, the appeals board can decide to adopt such information. And then second, I want to say that in fact there is flexibility. for vessels, vessels not regarded as inshore trawlers. Now the FC has already set the ceiling of 150,000, and so concerning this amount, there is no flexibility for the other. The appeals board should be able to exercise some flexibility.
The Secretary should disclose the information. What type of vessels are, and how much they're being compensated? Are they the same size, the same engine size? You need to disclose the figures. Because of slight differences, the compensation could have 100% difference. You need to set standards so you won't give people an impression that you're operating in a black box. Some people are given under the impression that they are leaders of certain or officials of certain business associations, and they are given larger compensation. So you are now under the suspicion of people abusing their power. I'd also like to express my own view. Mr. Albert Chan and other members had expressed a crucial observation, that is your objective compensation scheme in its operations. Some people have said that fishermen family, their whole livelihood is on the vessel. You now ask them to prepare so many documents, and they have difficulty in complying. I understand that they are now in an appeals process. So I'd like to ask the Secretary, in the appeals procedure, is it an effective procedure? Can it handle the objective standards? Can 2 or 3 appeals rulings, can these be clearly identified, and can that be used to respond to the questions raised just now? And the affected fishermen, can you allay their concerns? So when will we see the first ruling out of this appeal procedure? I cannot answer your last question, but your first question, that is, I am confident in the appeals board, even though we've heard fishermen's views, the saying that there are no fishing experts in the appeals board. Well, nobody can claim to be an expert. The fishermen are the experts, but these appeals boards, they come from a legal professional background. They know how to analyze information and come to a fair ruling. So I'm confident that through the appeal mechanism, we can consider previously information that was previously given little weight and come to a fair ruling. I would like to add that even the professor can't answer the question. He's appointed till the end of the whole procedure, but technically, when will they have the first ruling? Let's see if Professor So has any comment. Put simply, I can't answer you. The decision rests with the appeal board, and if we are asked to provide views, our inclination is to look at a few more cases rather than coming to a ruling on each case. Because when we reach the 100th case or 200th case, there might be some discrepancy in the ruler. So I can't give you an exact date for the first ruling. Yes, I understand your difficulties, but the concern is to have it done as soon as possible. Because I need to control time, we have 4 members. Could you speak for 1 minute, and then the secretary can summarize, because I don't think we can deal with them today. They are Ms. Claudia Mo, Sin Jong Gai, Vice Chairman, and Albert Chan. There are 269 vessels that have received 900 million. You have some 400 million, and then 90 million. But the appeals cases are 567 vessels, and there is no termination date for the appeals board. So if they can't pass the first round, they will have to spend the rest of their lives on the case. But Hong Kong was built as a Hong Kong originally was a fishing village. They cannot trawl fish anymore, but they're even dragging their feet. There's no time limit on this appeals board. Do they have to wait till 2047? It is very unfair to the fishermen. Can you help them with their appeal, Mr. Sin Jong Gai? Even though 30% of the money is set aside for appeals, but according to the FC Finance Committee arrangement, the offshore fishermen should not be included in the compensation according to the FC paper. But after all the appeals, then all the leftover money, will that be returned to the government, or will it be divided amongst the eligible fishermen? Vice Chairman. There are different types of fishermen. So the question, DAB has asked this question before, that is, the government should disclose all the information and compensation standards, and the government cannot stall by saying they are organizing the data. When one item is mature, you should disclose it. You can hand it. Well, Apple Chan, they should tell us the compensation awarded to the 200 odd vessels, the size of the vessel, the type of the vessel. We need to know what are the standards uniform for the compensation. Because you're now being criticized of being discriminatory. So we have appeal cases, but those that have been awarded, you need to disclose the award. I don't need the vessel registration. I just want to know the vessel size, the model and make, and where they operate. I'd also like to meet with the appeal board members. They need to understand our concern and under what conditions the FC paper was endorsed. The administration needs to provide information. I'm concerned that this is going to end up in a wild goose chase. The administration asks for receipts, invoices, and so on. Well, let me summarize. You want us to disclose figures? I will urge the departments to analyze the 200 odd awarded cases, and they'll disclose the figures. Regarding appeal timetable, there's no time limit. I think if we want to be detailed and we want to be thorough and fair, so it is a lengthy process. And I agree, it should not be postponed indefinitely. So we have extended the appeal period. When they have received all the appeals cases, you need to give them some time to analyze the appeal cases. They need to operate and accumulate experience, and they can tell us that we'll need a certain amount of time given the complexity of the cases, and the leftover money, if the appeals committee has already spent all the money, then there won't be any left over to spend. So in meeting the appeals board, I will meet with them. I will inform the appeals board that I will meet with them, but I will only delineate the major principles. I will not provide too much input and influence their decisions. I will take the initiative to meet with them, but I will not speak on behalf of your good self. Yes, the appeals board can decide which person they will meet. Okay. The leftover money will be divided, but if the money has been spent, they cannot. There won't be any leftover. The Sato license. The 30% leftover is not for the Sato license. The Sato ex gratia allowance has already been disbursed. It will not be disbursed in the 1.1 billion. It's not also set aside in the 30%. Mr. Chan, the answer has been provided. You can follow up in different venues. We still have 3 agenda items. If you don't object, I'd like to deal with the last item first. You're not a panel member? Thank you. I'm not a panel member either. So panel members, could you look at agenda 7? The Wet Market Working Group Committee, you recall that on 8th of January, we had endorsed Mr. Wong Gok Hing's motion to urge the convening of a working group to follow up the installation of air conditioners in wet markets. So the Vice Chairman and I, we had conducted initial discussions and set the terms of reference. It's a work plan and timetable. The terms of reference, working plan, timetable, this information is available in CB 2572/1213 So we now would like to consult panel members. Are there any questions? If after perusal, if you feel there are no questions, you need to understand we already reached the maximum quorum, so the Public Markets Working Group Committee will be placed on the waiting list, and we will allow the groups on the waiting list to operate, and we now already have 2 working groups on the list. They are the Pension Protection Working Group and the Domestic Violence Working Group. So while we're waiting for them to commence operations, in our business matters arising, item number 7, we will deal with it in April and July. So I'd like to ask members have any questions regarding paper bracket 10. The working group I don't have questions on the terms of reference. I just want to have air cons installed in wet markets. So, Chairman, you can also tell the House Committee that we have a heavy workload. I'm afraid that within this term of 4 years, we won't be able to commence work. So we should deploy more resources. I'm aware the 2 other working groups are important, pension and domestic violence. Otherwise, by the end of the term, we still won't be able to convene a meeting. I agree setting up this working group, but the focus shouldn't be on aircon installation. We should review public market policy, and we should have a comprehensive review where there's difficulty in procuring food, where there's a monopoly and no lack of choice. Which districts need wet markets? That should be part of the working group. We had dealt with this in LegCo. It was to regulate hawkers when the government doesn't want to install new markets. So we should look at whether there's a need for new markets. So that's in paragraph 4. In terms of reference, you need to add a district managed analysis. The Secretary could include this item. In the January meeting, the Secretary had dealt with this. He is looking at it district by district. We've heard 2 members' views. Wong Kok-heng. In the last House Committee, that there was also
So it seems that the House Committee's mainstream view is to stick to the cap of 8 subcommittees. The Secretary General said that there would be additional resources available in March 2014. And only then can the cap be raised. So even though we asked the HC chairman to include this suggestion on the HC's agenda, I don't think the outcome will be very different. So I think for the time being, let's just queue up. So we're the 3rd, right? Yes, according to the clerk, we cannot jump the queue. So we're the 3rd, not the 5th, not the 4th. I understand that it's difficult to get the HC's support to set up this subcommittee. Perhaps we can hold special meetings of the panel to follow up on this issue. In fact, Deputy Chairman, so I have already set the timetable, 147. So back to item 5, report on a consultancy study on organic food. We have with us Professor Sophia Chan, Under Secretary for Food and Health, Mr. Christopher Wong, Deputy Secretary for Food and Health, Ms. Alison Low, Assistant Secretary for Food and Health, and Dr. Liu Kah-kit, Assistant Director of Agriculture, Fisheries and Conservation. Under Secretary? Yes, thank you, Chairman. So this is the report on consultancy study on organic food. As members are aware, in Hong Kong, the consumption of organic food is increasing. In March 2011, the Bureau commissioned a consultant to carry out a study. The objective of the study is to consider whether the organic food trade in Hong Kong should be regulated, and if so, how. And we also will look at stepping up consumer education and providing them with more information. Now, concerning the methodology used by the consultant, the outcome of the study, the various options that have been studied by the consultant, members can refer to the paper. I just want to highlight a few salient points. Now, according to the consultant, in the past decade, there was some growth in the organic food market in Hong Kong, but still, it's a niche market. In fact, organic food accounts for only a very small percentage of the total amount of food consumed. And most of the imported food items, most of the organic food items consumed here are imported. For locally produced organic food items, they are mainly vegetables. And locally produced organic food items are relatively more expensive. But then the trade is of the view that there is potential for growth of this market. But still, the market of organic food is smaller than that for non-organic food. And then 98% of the respondents in the study have heard of the term organic food. They have some basic understanding or knowledge about organic food, but still there are misunderstandings. For example, some feel that organic food items are safer, of higher nutritional value, of better quality. Under Secretary, is it that you have a PowerPoint presentation for us? But in order to save time, I'll just highlight the salient points, unless members really want us to go through the presentation. Just want to highlight the salient points, and I can finish rather quickly. Or perhaps you can show us the relevant page so that we can see the figures. Yes. If members ask questions, then I can give replies later. So, not this one. Ms. Wong wants to see the table. Still, I can't see it. All right, Under Secretary, please continue. Oh, yes, I'll continue. Because it's getting late. So the respondents have some basic knowledge about organic food, but then there are misconceptions. For example, high nutritional value, better quality, and so on and so forth. And only some of the respondents regularly purchase organic food items. These respondents are of the view that organic food items are more expensive. They find difficult to distinguish between genuine and counterfeit organic food items, and these are the main reasons for they're not being interested in organic food. And the consultant has made reference to overseas experience and has studied 4 options: status quo, increasing consumer awareness, administrative measures, and legislation. So we have weighed the pros and cons of these options. We've considered the views of the stakeholders. The consultant has proposed raising awareness and administrative measures. We hope that we can increase consumers' knowledge of organic food, and we also hope that we can encourage the industry to produce, source, and trade authentic organic products so as to facilitate consumers in making informed purchasing decisions and avoid the proliferation of non-authentic organic products. And that would help to ensure sustainable development of the organic food industry in Hong Kong. We have read the consultant's report, but we haven't come to any conclusions or decisions yet. We are now here to listen to members' views. All right. Mr. Wong Kwok Heng, 5 minutes. Yes, Chairman. Concerning options 2 and 3, I tend to think that they are feasible. Stepping up education to increase the awareness of consumers and to increase the awareness of the all parties, of course, that's good. And I think administrative measures are required, in particular certification. In other words, we want to see the Q marks. Now, we've received complaints about some traders palming off the sham as the genuine. In order to sell the items at a higher price. But consumers do not know whether the food items are organic food items or not. And so a labeling system is desirable, and I think you can talk to the trade concerning how to establish a labeling system. But then if the administrative measures fail, if there are a lot of complaints, then the administration should consider the legislation option. So I think the administration should implement administrative measures for say 1 year or 2 years, and then carry out a review to see whether legislation is required. Administrative measures can be implemented rather speedily, and then after 1 or 2 years, the administration can decide whether legislation is required. Now we have the there is the Trade Descriptions Ordinance. Under the ordinance, if there is false trade description, then prosecution action can be taken. So during the period when administrative measures are implemented, can the administration step up enforcement and prosecution under the Trade Descriptions Ordinance, so that before we have legislation, there will still be ways to take enforcement action. Chairman, concerning certification, I want to say that in 2002, an organic resource center was set up to provide certification for local organic food products. And I understand that some local organic farms and products have already been certified. Perhaps the Assistant Director can supplement. Yes, Chairman. Through the Vegetable Marketing Organization, we subsidize the setting up of the organic resource center by the Baptist University and relevant groups. And this organization provides labels for certified products. And we also subsidize the Hong Kong Organic Resource Center in providing public education for consumers so that consumers can make informed choices. The HKORC carries out surveys annually on the sale and purchase of organic food items. With regard to supermarkets, specialist shops, the organic food items sold in these places are certified and labeled. But then consumers may have doubts with regard to organic food items sold in wet markets. Of course, consumers are welcome to make inquiries with the HKORC. And concerning fraudulent and counterfeit organic food items, I understand that the Customs and Excise Department has taken enforcement action against such food items. Can I ask the Secretary or Undersecretary whether after 1 year, say for example, that you consider the need for legislation? Yes, Chairman, thank you. We have made reference to the consultant's report. We understand that if we go down the legislative route now, then there may be inconvenience caused to small operators, and also the extra cost will be transferred to consumers, and there are also other considerations.
That's why we don't have immediate legislative intentions. So if the trade description is problematic, the existing legislation of trade description ordinance can handle that. We also want certification and administrative measures. These would be feasible, and we also would like more self-regulation. And if our consumers can enhance their understanding, then they can be more savvy consumers. It's hard to determine, it's not easily identified whether it's organic. We have to rely on trade description, where if there are fraudulent claims, then they can be prosecuted. But if you want to prove whether the process is organic, it's not that easy. Before we invite Mr. Chan Kah-lok to speak, I'd like to ask members. We originally had another agenda item, the Food Monitor report, and in this agenda item, it includes members' questions about force-fed chickens and heavy metals in vegetables. Given the lateness of the hour and the member who proposed this item not present, would you agree? And I'm also asking the administration, would you agree postponing this item to the meeting in March? we do not object. So we'll conclude this item and then we'll adjourn. Next, Mr. Chen Galop and Vice Chairman. Thank you. I've read the paper and I understand the consultant's view. I agree with the conclusion. It's a very fair. There's option 2 and 3, consumer education and administrative measures to deal with organic food. But I want to emphasize that the administration should understand that we should look at the issue from the consumer's perspective. The industries, the retailers have their views. Of course, we need to listen to them. But why do we have the report? It's because the public's needs and public health and safety concerns. That's why we need to conduct these reports. Enhancing awareness and strengthening administrative measures is important. If we don't have option 3, we won't have option 2. So there is a causal relationship between options 2 and 3. You cannot have a vague promise of consumer education. You can't have a vague, ambiguous API. So how do we implement option 3? The details are important. If your measures don't have concrete results, that is, when the consumer, when he doesn't understand the label description, then it's very meaningless. It's hard to determine whether a food is organic or not organic. Some foods might have Hong Kong certification and some might have overseas certification. So I think administrative measures would be very helpful. So specific measures, is this feasible? Is it convenient to the public? Can they determine whether a given food is certified by Hong Kong authorities? Second, we have minimum standards mentioned in the paper. That needs to be fine-tuned. If you tell the world that we have the lowest standards, I understand there might be such a scientific concept. But when you tell the public that it's the lowest standard, perhaps we could rephrase it. We don't want the rest of the world we don't want the rest of the world to feel that Hong Kong has the lowest standards. We don't want that misunderstanding. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your views. I think the minimum standard, it refers to, it's a benchmark. It's not the lowest standard. You understand? If we have a very high standard that exceeds the basic standard, it might not be feasible. So the administrative measures, I agree, they have to work hand in hand. And of course, how do we define organic? If we also need a fraudulent claim mechanism, and that can protect consumer interests. I fully agree with your view that we need to safeguard consumer interests, but we need to consult the industries and stakeholders so that there can be a comprehensive response. Whether it's consultation with the industry, we need resources. The document doesn't deal with it. So, do you have any resource considerations? You need resources for certification. You want to promote organic food, it needs resources. I think this is our first report in the panel on the results of the consultant. We'd like to hear legislators' views before coming up with a policy direction. If we need extra resources, we can see whether we need to approach the FC. On certification, the director said we already have a mechanism and we don't need extra resources. Thank you, Chairman. After setting up the Organic Resource Center, the certification work, I have to call it a commercial behavior. They will charge fees, and we encourage the Organic Resource Center to be self-sufficient. And we work with the Organic Farming Support Service and to do the certification work. And we will continue to subvent the Produce Green Foundation, and we'll work through the industry we'll work with the partners. Thank you, Chair. I agree with Chan Gallo. We should not call it a minimum standard. The Hong Kong public would not accept that. So the Hong Kong Organic Resource Center had a black spot map. So how many successful prosecution cases do we have? He said we only have 2 or 3. So what is your view on law enforcement statistics? How can you strengthen this area? Some people also tell us that we can only deal with certification. We cannot do laboratory testing. According to the industry, you have to conduct 2,000 tests. It would be very resource. It would consume a lot of resources. And lastly, the agricultural fisheries industry has a heritage problem. There's insufficient funds. There's no new technology. It is not conducive to the development of agricultural fishery. The DAB had mentioned, besides production, we could also develop ecotourism, but there are a lot of restrictions in this area. Has the administration considered developing organic ecotourism together? Because if you just limit it to production, there might be some restrictions. So I hope the administration can take a wider view. I'll answer your third question. The eco-fishing industry, we have an open attitude. The policy address also has mentioned, I'm referring to agricultural fisheries. It's not just fishing, it's agriculture as well. Agricultural fishing tourist industry or recreational industry. Well, the director could supplement their AFCD views, but on agriculture, we have the Fishing Foundation in agriculture. We have earmarked some funds, about some 200 million that can be used. That's why I said I have an open attitude. We also have some funds that provide loans. So in this, the third question, that's my answer to your third question. Regarding the first and second questions on testing and certification, Director, On law enforcement difficulties, we don't have a definition of organic in Hong Kong right now, and consumers can be confused. So that is an inherent problem. On law enforcement, you cannot rely on a laboratory testing to determine whether it's organic or inorganic. So that is the inherent obstacle in law enforcement.
No. The professor has already made known the black spots, and I think that is consumer education, and the consumers will know how to choose organic food items. But of course, if the labels are misleading or contain misleading information, prosecution action can be taken under existing legislation. And such cases can also serve as public education materials for consumers and producers. So we need to step up education among consumers and producers. We can't rely mainly on enforcement, because enforcement is in fact a very costly process. There's a need to collect evidence, and so stepping up public education is effective, because if the consumers do not purchase the items, then that would be a great deterrent. And then concerning certification, now the Organic Resource Center has its inspectors to inspect the farms every year, and there may also be surprise inspections, and then there may be inspections based on intelligence, and that would also these will also be useful. And leisure farming, we do encourage farm operators to switch to the mode of leisure farming. We provide technical support to farmers, and also we provide support to farmers because they will have to change to a new mode of operation, and they may need to invest in certain resources. But we do agree that leisure farming is one direction that local farms can pursue. Ms. Helena Wong. I don't know whether there is a definition for organic food. You say it's very difficult to come up with a definition, but other countries do have definitions. For example, in Australia, they do have some criteria or some definitions. If you don't have a definition, then how can you do certification? And concerning consumer education, I want to say that consumers want the government to safeguard their consumer rights. They have no way to verify whether the certification is authentic or not. Now they know that organic food is better but more expensive. Some are willing to pay more, but then they do not know how to verify the labels. And you admit that there are counterfeit and fraudulent organic food items in the market. Now there are some who support organic food, and they don't know how to verify the labels, and as a result they may pay more in return for fraudulent and counterfeit organic food items. So can you tell us whether we should trust what is in the labels of organic food items? Yes, thank you, Ms. Wong. Now, in fact, organic food is about a production process. no chemical fertilizers, no pesticides, no GM ingredients. These are the components of organic food. Concerning certification, we can see from the consultancy study that the Hong Kong public do not have enough knowledge about organic food, and with scanty knowledge, they are not in a position to distinguish between authentic and fraudulent organic food items. The Hong Kong Organic Resource Center comprises scholars, academics, and experts in the field. And they grant certification on the basis of certain rigorous criteria. And so consumers should have confidence in the Q marks granted by the HKORC. But of course, I understand that publicity and public education are important. The Assistant Director may wish to supplement. Now, I want to say that the HKORC do have criteria to go by. They are based on consultation with the stakeholders and also consultation of bodies like the IFOAM. So these are not minimum standards. It's just that we do not have standards prescribed in the law. But then the HKORC doesn't adopt minimum standards. I want to say that organic food items certified by the HKORC can satisfy and meet international standards. But then for imported organic food items, you have to be able to recognize those labels. Is it the Agricultural Ministry of the U.S. providing the certification, or the New Zealand Ministry of Agriculture providing the certification? We need to teach consumers how to recognize these labels. But if the label is false or is fraudulent, now, say, for example, in one case, it was claimed that there was certification by the Baptist University, but in fact, it was not an authentic certification, then prosecution action was taken. And in some cases, there was false description of products, and I want to assure members that the HKORC are workable standards, high standards, but they are not standards prescribed by the law. Mr. Chen Chi-Chin, I understand it's difficult to provide certification for organic food products, but I think ultimately we need to legislate. We may be talking about a 10-year timetable. It's difficult for consumers and small operators to differentiate between fraudulent and authentic organic food items. I have a friend who used to be a small organic food trader, and in fact he didn't know how to differentiate between authentic and fraudulent organic food items. And then some have said that in the mainland, you only need to pay in order to get certification of organic food items. Now, but of course, if you test a product and you find chemical pesticides or fertilizers, of course, that's not organic food. So in Hong Kong, do we test products which are claimed to be organic food products? If you consult the trade will tell you that these cumbersome certification procedures will increase production costs and reduce profits. They find these procedures cumbersome, but then there are some traders who do have some convictions. They are of the view that such food items, in fact, can make people healthy, and there are some who do not mind going through these procedures so that the public will know more about organic food items, the benefits of such items, and how to choose such food items. Thank you, Mr. Chen. I think I'll just go back to your first question. In fact, the next item is on the food surveillance program, and it's about the Center for Food Safety's taking 65,000 samples annually for tests, including organic food items, non-organic food items, vegetables, locally produced or imported from the mainland or from overseas countries. Now we take samples at the border crossing points. In the mainland, there are some registered farms or registered organizations which can bring food items into Hong Kong, and only these licensed farms and organizations can bring food items into Hong Kong. And there is the Quality Accreditation Ministry in the mainland to ensure compliance. And we also have also carried out visits to the mainland, covering all aspects of food safety, including organic and non-organic food items. But then, concerning food safety, I understand that there are certain standards which must not be exceeded. But what if you find ingredients in the food products which should not have been found in organic food items? Now, Chairman, it's difficult to, by carrying out tests, discover that a certain food item is in fact not organic food, because organic food is in fact about the production process. So for organic food items, we have certification and a labeling system. And if the food item carries the label, then we will believe that it is organic food. Otherwise, we'll make use of the existing mechanism and the existing legislation to take enforcement action. Now, Mr. Chen wants to know whether you, by carrying out a test, discover some chemical pesticides in a strawberry. Of course, that will not be in compliance with the definition of organic food. Then, can you take prosecution action? Yes. Say if you find in a test certain pesticides, chemical pesticides, then of course we can take prosecution action. Mr. Chen, I want to ask whether if a certain product is claimed as an organic food product, then you will test for the existence of certain pesticides to prove that it's really an organic food item. In fact, that's in our routine food surveillance program. At the next meeting, we will discuss the food surveillance program 2012. And I think in that discussion we will also touch on organic food items. All right, so the meeting is adjourned. Next meeting 2:30 on the 12th of March. The clerk will inform members of the venue of that meeting, because we may need to have a 2.5 hour or even a 3-hour meeting on that day. So the clerk will provide the information to members later. Thank you. Thank you very much.